Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, I was going to start by making a mild joke that my parents are in the audience and they're normally really interactive and loud and quite distracting, so I've brought some chocolates to keep them calm. Could you just pass them back to my parents? They're just sitting behind you. Okay. It's good. If you've experienced them before, you'll understand that was necessary. So, I have really a narrative to explain to you that's a personal journey that's happened this summer, where in May, I did a project in New York for a creative time, and it was a project called Plumbing Pipe 123, and it was because I'm really excited by the material that's plumbing pipe, because it's so light and strong as a structure. And the project was experimenting and looking at different kinds of sculptures and the different history of uses of plumbing pipe. And we traveled around New York and did various different sculptures and performances. And one of them was the attempt to make a geodesic dome, which is, I think it's used in a lot of different structures, but this one, for example, I should ask my glamorous assistant, Jack, to help at this point. Is it in this building?
That's an icosahedron, and the little one is a dodecahedron, and the fourth and fifth platonic solids, which are solids that you can rotate any face onto any other face, and they look the same, like a cube or tetrahedron. So geodesic dome is about imposing straight lines on spherical geometry. That's it.
I guess the thing I should really explain to you first of all is that why I'm excited about working with this subject is I'm an artist. I'm not trained as an engineer in any way, and I was excited by the idea of an arch and the idea that the geodesic dome is what's it called? Self-supporting structure. So it's like within itself there's a real beauty of the way that it's actually just so economic. And the best way I can explain it is through my experiences and what I've been experimenting with. But I don't know, it's incredibly formal, the way that this is set up. And if anyone thinks I'm speaking too simply or in some way not explaining what I'm talking about, could you just shout at me? So if I'm talking, sort of running away with it or not explaining enough, just say. Okay, so have you got a little booklet that's been given to you? Okay, good. What happened was I wanted to build with the plumbing pipe a 5-meter diameter dome, and I wanted it to be something that was like a psychological space, a little bit like Dan Graham's pavilions, in that you, like this, come somewhere and really enjoy whatever happens within the space. And so with Dan Graham's pavilions, you're meant to sit on beanbags and watch cartoons and sort of enjoy their reflexiveness and just even the zone of them, like a folly. And so I started to approach the project and did some research online, and all of the images I found online were sort of ex-maths tutors, and they'd been all designing these geodesic domes by using a very simple metal joint that I have got a picture of. But it's a case of flat pieces of metal all put together with a bolt going through the middle to hold the structure. And I realized that it's a very simple, male way to approach the idea of making these points. And because I'm more playful, or I've had an arts background, I started thinking about trying to make a different way to join the plumbing pipe together. And this is another point where I should actually set Jack up making a model of something. Is that okay? So
I'm going to make an icosahedron, which was the first thing we made on the project.
Okay, let's see if I can find this. Okay, is there somewhere I can show the camera and it goes up big? Does that work? Okay, can you see that metal joint? And how do you feel about it? It's male. Was that my dad? He's a plant in the audience. He said the right thing. It looks good. It looks like it could work, doesn't it? Okay, hang on. There's another example. One second. Okay, there's another example. Okay, right. So obviously, or maybe I should show you the bearded mathematician. I think he's quite nice. Can you see him? Lower, higher, higher. There he is. Anyway, I couldn't find any I don't know, really it was more to do with, I didn't want to embrace metal and nuts and bolts and things like that. And when Jack showed me, Jack's good at maths and physics, and he's a boy, which is something else that comes up really soon. When he showed me this design, we both realized, or he probably realized, and I took it away from him, that what he's doing is putting the pipe cleaner into the straw. So the idea was to design something that goes into the plumbing pipe, and we were going to try and make a joint. Okay, no. Yes? Good. It was to try and make a joint that was escaped a lot of the problems we were coming up with. The main problem with this is that you'd have to make a mathematical equation to work out, not mathematical, you'd just have to work out what the angle is on all the joints. But by designing this rubber joint, you're escaping from having to calculate. Are you all excited by this? Oh, that's a relief. That's a relief. Okay. And at this point, I was jumping up and down, and we thought we should patent it immediately. Anyway, what we also did was made a plaster cast, and I, every day for the last 40 days, cast the right amount to build this structure. And then we did a color coding that the 6 pointed ones would be blue, and the 5 pointed ones would be red, and the 4 yellow. So it was all going to be incredibly user-friendly, and it would be a fun kit that you could just turn up somewhere and build your own geodesic dome. And then you could either do a film club inside it, you could do anything you like, but it was almost like an autonomous fun zone. So we're all sort of really excited about the ideas, and only now and again a few people pointed out there were going to be problems along the way, and these people tended to be male. And so this strange phenomenon became apparent that boys seemed to know what was going wrong, and they could pinpoint the problems, and then I'd go away and sort of work out what I could do and come up with a solution. So sort of the photo story comes from this idea that I realized that there's a very different approach, which I'm not saying anything new, that there's a female and a male approach. And the female approach was to go ahead even though you didn't know what you were doing, and be very happy to experiment in a way that you didn't, even when you knew it wasn't going to work, you'd still make the effort. And there's something else I wanted to say, so I'm just going to check my notes. How's your model going? Okay. Here, it'll be on here. Okay. Interesting. Right. So the thing I wanted to get to was that it's basically been a disaster, and it hasn't worked. And what's happened is that when you build the plumbing pipe, the rubber doesn't have any kind of structure inside it. It needs some sort of pull for the self-sustaining structure to actually pull the whole way out for it to be arched. And I didn't realize this until we built the 5-meter experience. So these are in fact useless, and I've spent 2 months and a lot of energy and effort trying to make the project happen. But the only thing I can say is that I wouldn't have known, people could tell you were going wrong, but you'd still have to have got to the point of building the 5-meter experience to know. And then when we built it, what happened was it was very obvious suddenly that, can you see if I point to that section? It's where it would be a hemisphere if it was on the floor. That section is a weak point, and that the weight of the rubber made it pull out at that point. And if, for example, I know that Brunelleschi's dome in Florence has a chain around, or domes have flying buttresses at this point to help the structure. But what was really disappointing to me was I'd made a sort of bastard form of what Buckminster Fuller's genius is. And I'd done it all on my own, and with my own persistence and obsession. And so what I thought to present here, and I'm not sure how it fits into the context of the experiments, but what it was an artist taking on sort of pretty outrageously engineering without any kind of background in it, with the blind faith that something interesting would come out of it, and that because of, I think I was going to use the analogy of Mad King Ludwig in Bavaria. Does anyone know Mad King Ludwig? Yeah. Is that my dad again? Does anyone else know Mad King Ludwig? Good. I just find him really interesting as an example because of the particular time that he was and the fact that he had money and he had a huge imagination, and it's the irresponsibility with the imagination and the funding that I relate to. I've recently been earning, I've more recently been earning, God, it's the laughter from the parents area, isn't it? Should bring some more family next time. I think next time's good. What I'm trying to say is that I've spent something like £1,000 on this ridiculous project that doesn't work, but the thing that's come out of it has been the learning experience and the weird sort of concepts of how the female and male approach to it are so different, and I'm basically wanting to concentrate on making the comic, which will explain the scenario, the drama. And what else has come out of it? Yes, I think I've slightly become humbled in that it doesn't necessarily come to a good result if you just, as an artist, just charge into a totally different scientific, or what would it be, field, another field that deserves probably being left alone by someone like me. But maybe I should just check with my assistant in case he thinks I've forgotten something. Check with notes.
Yeah. No.
No, nothing forgotten?
When we started building it home, we built lots of prototypes, and they all. Okay, so I'm an engineer. I did a physics degree.
Would you like to have a feel?
So I sat down and worked out some things that should work.
5 minutes.
Having never dealt with materials before, I believed in the rubber joints, and I think it was a good example of, any idiot.
Any idiot? Did I just hear that?
Any idiot who put up a shelf or
okay.
Put up a shelf should have known that they're just ridiculous. They're totally not strong enough. I didn't even think about how much the plumbing pipe would weigh. It must have weighed 200 kilograms or something.
But I think what I've really learned is by doing it physically, I don't know if the picture explains that are they dominating? I've only got something like 3 minutes to wrap it up and there's chaos where the parents are. I think the thing that was really obvious is, can I just use the thing? The picture of the dome is really big. When you realize how big it is, that experiment, you couldn't have done it with models and known. You'd have to build the 5-meter experience. So in a way, the expense and the effort, you couldn't do it another way. But what was your point, Mum? What have I forgotten? Go on. You don't need a microphone.
When you're building a dome,
yes.
the difference between the men building it and the girls building it.
Yeah. Well, it should be in this comic that what happened was when, the irony was that when I began to build the first huge 5-meter attempt, 5 boys turned up to help me, and just the irony was that it collapsed and it didn't happen. And I was really over-the-top drama queen, sort of went home crying and lay down for 2 days, not being able to move. And then I realized I'd try again with girls, and the next 2 days later we tried with 8 girls, and it actually worked, and it was successful. What can I say? But there was a much more sort of gentle and inquisitive approach to doing it, working with women. But I also understand that the irony of saying who needs boys in this project is that, in fact, the boys have been crucial in mainly pointing out where the problems have been to then look at. Time to go?
Did you build it to 5/8 with girls, or just a hemisphere?
What does that mean?
That's 5/8, and that's a hemisphere. Do you get it?
The girls built it to this. That was when we learned that the weak point was this section here, because that's where it was collapsing from. But I think also I've got to explain that the boys were the dress rehearsal, and when the girls did it, we had the advantage of the time before we did it. So I'm really not being ungenerous to how the boys have helped in this project. Just weirdly, it really, I don't know, I don't think it is just me. I think it is actually the difference between arts and science and the approach that we've come across is it's really glaringly obvious, the difference between the information and knowledge that boys seem to work with. They very clearly pretend to know what they're talking about. But maybe I'll just finish on that note. Thank you. No, it's beautiful. That looks really beautiful.